guys, in this video we're going to have a go at making a Bob the Builder cake topper, and I'm going to use a modelling paste for this. I'm going to use the lip head. You can try a different one if you want though. This one's quite firm though, so I shouldn't have to leave it long for it to set to build my shapes. So I've just dyed a pale blue for the legs. We've rolled a long sausage shape and we're going to bend those in half. Keep holding it against your picture so we can get a rough idea of size. Now I've just printed this one off from the internet. I'm just going to trim along the bottom of his legs. I've gone slightly longer than they are on the picture, but that's fine. Now to hold him into a cake, I'm actually putting in some wooden kabob skewers. I'm going to put one in each leg, leave a little bit out the top for the body, and I'm just going to use a stitching tool to sort of put some lines down his jeans so he looks like they've been sewn. So we're getting those seams in on the outside and the inside of each leg. Now I'm going to use a honey gold colour now to create him some boots. So kind of create a bit of a oval, and we're going to trim that in half to create the two shoes. Now don't worry if they don't look exactly the right shape, because we're going to sort of move them around a bit now. To push that onto the bottom of the leg, making sure the skewer goes through it. When that's pushed in place, we'll go around the bottom of the jeans again with the stitching tool. I'm just going to put some dints in the bottom of the shoe so it looks more like the sole, and then we're going to roll long thin strips, so we'll trim this so it's nice and thin. These are going to go around the bottom of each boot. Just stick that around there so you can just see those little dints underneath that you've popped on. Just give a bit of a push on. Now this particular modelling paste, you shouldn't really need anything to stick the pieces together with. If you're using a different type of modelling paste, you'll probably need to use some water or edible glue between the pieces to make sure they're held on. And I've got a yellow, I've gone for quite a bright yellow here. And we're just going to create a bit of a body. Again, keep holding it against your picture for size. And we're going to push that onto those skewers. Just make sure the skewers aren't sticking out too much that they come out of the top of your piece of modelling paste. Just sort of pulling it down to attach it to the legs. And don't worry if you don't get a very neat finish around the middle, because he's going to be having his tool belt covering that anyway. And I'm just adding in a little cocktail stick through for his neck. Now, if you think anybody is going to be eating this, then try and put a piece of spaghetti in rather than a cocktail stick. And then we're going to roll some red nice and thin, and we're just going to cut some little squares out. And we're just going to stick some of these on the front of the top. And you don't need to worry about going all over, because you can see on the picture we can only see a tiny strip down his middle that's going to be seen. I'll just run a stitching wheel through the middle of that, and you play around with neatening that back up a bit. Just going to put a little line now with the bottom end of my Dresden tool, and another one just slightly to the side. Just put some little lines in where I want to put buttons. You don't have to put these lines in. I'm just using the leftover colour from the shoes, and I've dyed a skin tone now. I'm going to create a little cylinder for his neck. Just again squeeze that on nice and tight, and it's just the skin tone one that I've used for this. I'm just trying to pinch it outwards slightly at the top, ready for my head sitting nicely on there. So back to your skin tone colour again. Just create a nice ball. Check size wise against your picture. Mine's a tiny bit bigger, but then I made my legs a tiny bit taller as well. So we'll start to create the head shape, and we're going to just kind of stick our thumbs in a little bit to create a couple of eye sockets, and that looks about the right size. So now I'm going to try and add a smile. So I'll put a couple of dints in first. If you go too deep, just give it a gentle rub with your hand or your finger, and I'm just going to draw a little line with the pointy end of my modelling tool, and then let's see if we can sort of push up a bottom lip from there. We'll do the same with the top one, like that. And we're just going to keep the nose nice and simple. So just a little ball of the skin colour again. I'm going to push that on in place. So just smooth the nose in slightly at the top, and then we're just going to poke a couple of nostrils in underneath. Poke in the eye holes just using the bottom end of my paintbrush. Oh, I've gone slightly uneven there. And just roll a tiny ball of white now and push into each eye socket. I can see one of mine's a little bit higher than the other. And I just want the tiniest piece of the skin tone now, and I think I've just got it out of shot, just to create a top eyelid. So just push quite gently across the top. Try not to cover up too much of his eye, and then what we'll do is we'll actually paint the brown into the middle. Now it's quite difficult to paint onto the lip head that I've used, so you can replace the white eyeballs with just a normal white fondant. I'm going to give him some tiny little eyebrows. So I've got really dark brown that I've dyed. Just push these on in place, and when they're on there we can start bending them around a little bit and repositioning them, changing the shape of them like so. Then we want two tiny dots of black. Again, I've just got modelling paste, but you can get away with fondant for this. And we're just going to push those into the centre of each eye. So I've gone quite large with them, so you can't really see much of the brown. And we're just going to put some whites in these eyes now. Just a little dot at the top of each one, like that. And I'm taking off the top of his head now to add the hat onto. If you find it easier to leave the head rounded at the top and add the hat, that's fine. I find it easier to add the hat to a flat surface. Then we're going to push that head onto the cocktail stick and attach to the rest of his body, like so. So some dark brown modelling paste this time. Just press this around the back of his head and slightly coming around the sides, but you don't want to come too far forward. And then we'll trim off all this extra at the top. Now once his hair's on, we can add 2 balls for the ears. So 1 ball either side, we'll just flatten it a little bit, and then we're going to push the handle of the paintbrush in the centre of each ear. And now I'm just going to add a little bit of pink to give him a bit of blush on his cheeks. And just go quite steady with this. You don't need to have really bright pink cheeks. And we're going back to our yellow and red. So a bit like we did on the shirt, but we've got a thin strip of yellow, and we're adding some more of our red squares. I'm just going to cut this a bit thinner, and this is going to create a collar for him. So I'll just put this piece around the neck. Just give it a good push on. Ooh, doesn't want to stick down. Just going to sort of push that down with my modelling tool to make sure it stays in place. So this time I've got another pale blue. It's very similar to the colour I've used on his jeans, and I've got a rectangle that's going to fit down the back with a little curve where it's going to go to the back of the neck. We'll push this in place. We'll trim off the extra off the bottom that we don't need, and we're going to take some off sort of around where the arms are going to be attached. So sort of a bit of a semicircle, roughly kind of cut into the back of the arm or back of the shoulder. And I'll leave that for a bit and move back onto his hard hat. So I've started with quite a large piece of yellow, roll it into a ball, and then we're going to trim the bottom off so that you get a nice flat piece. Now it's slightly too big, but I'm kind of pinching the bottom edge to change the shape of it a little bit. So pinching that out, and then once I've done that, I'm just using the knife on its side to sort of put an indent in either side of the hard hat. And just rub that down there where I've scuffed it up a little bit. Just flick out the sides of the hat slightly, and again the same at the front. And we'll try this on for size. Yeah, so I think that's alright. So if you're happy with the size, give it a good push on in place. And we're going to move back to the front of his jacket. So again, we need quite a thinly rolled out piece, and we're going to do thin pieces, one for either side of the body. And I'm cutting out a little sort of curve, a bit like we did on the back of the arms or the back of the shoulders. And we're going to push this onto the body, trim off any extra off the bottom. Now my curve's not gone far enough in, so I'll remark that and put another one in. And we'll do the same on the other side. Try and rub out any of those seams that you can see. So you should look like that. Now you want a piece of white that's nice and thin to go on either side of the jacket. So push that in place. I haven't cut it to the exact size because I'm going to cut that after pushing it in place. So cut it so it matches the line of his vest. We need to give it a black edging now. So you just want some black that we're going to roll nice and thin. And we're going to start by draping it around the neck. It needs to be long enough that it will go around the back of the neck and it will come all the way down to the front of his vest, like that. And now we can give him his tool belt. So I want brown this time. Strip of this to go around the middle, and it's going to cover that seam or the join between the body and the legs. I've left a bit of a gap, that's fine because his buckle's going to go there. Just stick a little square of brown on down one side, and then roll sort of a snake shape and cut some small pieces off that to stick onto the tool belt. Now I haven't actually given him any tools. He's got an empty tool belt on mine. And then I've got a little bit of light grey, and we're going to create the buckle. So you don't want it quite square, you want it slightly narrower at one side than at the other. And a tiny little sausage shape to go at the end of that buckle. And then we're going to roll some more black bits, and they're going to go either side of that white strip that you've put across his vest. Now we're going to make in some hands. So we're going to start with a little sausage shape. I'm going to thin it around the wrist. And I'm going to cut a little triangle out where the thumb's going to go. Cut 4 lines into the rest of the hand to create the fingers, and they'll be quite square looking at the end, so we're just going to try and round these off a little bit, and then just play around with the positioning where you want them to go. I don't think I'm going to put anything in his hand, so I'll probably just put his hand on his hip, but we're going to just indent around where we want the elbow to be. I've given him quite a big arm. Take a bit off that. I'm going to push it tight to the body up near the shoulder, just moving it around until you're happy with where it sits. So keep going until you're happy. I've ended up cutting a little bit more off camera because his arm's just looking a bit big at the top. And you can use some edible glue or water to stick the fist onto his hip. And you're just going to do exactly the same with the other arm. Now my elbows are leaning slightly backwards, so I don't want them to get squashed when I put him down, so I rested him on the knife. And I'm going to make him some sleeves, so I've just got a strip of yellow that we're going to wrap around the shoulder and the top of the arm. Try and take some of that off with my tool. And then we need some more of our red squares again to create the checked effect. So we'll stick these over the sleeve. You might need some part ones as well. You might not want to use all the big full squares for filling in the tiny gaps. Again, put some more of the stitching tool lines in like we did down the front of the shirt. And then you just want a strip of yellow that's going to go around the bottom of that sleeve. So it's kind of overlapped over some red squares. And then we're going to add some more red squares now to this final piece that we've put on. Put your stitching tool line through them. And he also needs a thin piece of black that's going to go around the vest, around like the kind of shoulder area. Stick that on with a bit of water or edible glue. Okay, that's one arm done. And you can do exactly the same with the other arm, like that. And then we just want a little B for Bob the Builder on this helmet. Just roll a long thin piece and we'll kind of curl around each end. And then once that's on the helmet, you can play around and get it in place where you want it. So there he is, all finished. He's ready to go into a cake. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and leave me a comment below. You can see more of my tutorials by clicking on the images on screen now. If you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button to stay up to date with my future tutorials. There are also links in the description box below where you can find me on Facebook, Instagram and more.